Welcome to Norse Code, the #1 podcast for your Minnesota Vikings. I am your host and producer. My name is James Pagashnik. Thank you guys so much for listening. And at the other end of the tin cannon string, we have our analyst and co-host. You know him from numerous blogs and podcasts around the internet, most notably from theathletic.com. He is Mr. Useful Human, Arif Hassan. Arif, how are you doing this July 5th?
Doing pretty well, I guess. I don't know.
just fifthing it up now? Is that something we can say? July 5th always seems like the letdown.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's like, it's not one of those days where it's like acceptable to have a hangover or anything like that. So it's just, yeah, you're going to work. It's July 5th. Nothing happened.
It's July 5th. You probably have some form of a sunburn.
Right. Yeah, it's
mild.
July 5th is probably underrated in terms of how disappointing a day it generally is.
Mild indigestion. It's right up there with January 1st. But I feel like January 1st is like a little bit worse because it's more socially acceptable to be hungover or to just not be like feeling great because of New Year's. So it takes second place behind January 1st. So it's just all disrespect all the time.
Well, at least like you get leeway on New Year's. Like if you come into work a little late, I mean, obviously it depends on the workplace or whatever, right? But like if you come into work a little late, or if you're just like irritable, like people get it. They're like, oh, it's New Year's. Okay. But like July 5th, if you come in with like a hangover and you're irritable, people are just like, man, what is this dude's problem?
I know that in my office particularly, if anything gets done on July 5th, that we did something wrong. Like July 5th always seems like the slowdown day. Like,
yeah,
no, we're if anything happens here, it's actually going to be in spite of ourselves.
Yeah, but like that's the thing. Like January 1st, no one expects anything to happen, but on July 5th, people expect like work to get done. That's it. Like that's why I think July 5th might be worse than January 1st, even though you feel worse on January 1st. I think people just expect you to feel worse.
Well, the fact that most people don't have to actually go into work.
Oh, that's a good point, too.
On January 1st.
Well, see, but that's the other reason July 5th might be worse, right? Because you have to go to work.
You're just kind of stuck there, yeah.
Like you call in sick on like if your work has you come in on January 1st and they give you like sick days and you call in sick on January 1st, people are like, yeah, okay, I get it. You call in sick on July 5th, they're like, man, this dude.
Like what they expect a story if nothing else when you come back.
Yeah.
You're like, so where did you get lost? There was a great fire in a truck at a gas station that involved fireworks in Grand Forks, so people would wonder if that was you. Like, jeez. It was actually really fun. We were a couple blocks away, and we were able to see the whole thing. And the fireworks were going off. The big show in Grand Forks is going off, and we hear all of these sirens. Like, what the hell is... And we could actually see a little bit of fire from the gas station a couple of blocks away, and all of the fire trucks, the police, like, everybody is being stopped on South Wash. It's all just like... It's a million sirens going on, and we're like, what is going on? We can barely see a fire. And all the videos later show these fireworks exploding out of the back of the truck. And it was like, of course a truck in Grand Forks catches fire with fireworks in the back at a gas station during the actual fireworks. Like, why not? We're just playing Grand Forks Mad Libs at this point.
That's kind of another thing about July 5th. If you show up wherever you're going, if you show up with an injury on July 5th that you did not have on July 3rd, A, everyone's going to kind of guess what happened. B, they're going to blame you for it. It's your fault. You shouldn't have been playing with fireworks. Yeah. Even if it's unrelated to fireworks, people are going to be judging you.
Yeah, it's Jason Pierre-Paul ruined that for all of us.
Yeah. So, yeah, July 5th, awful. Actually, we can, I think, put it somewhere on our short list of worst days.
Agreed.
Now that we've had this conversation. Because like you come in missing a finger on any other day of the year, people are going to be like, man, what happened? I'm so sorry.
Absolute
I feel bad
sympathy.
For you.
Absolute sympathy.
July 5th, you come in with a missing finger. Well, hopefully you don't have to come in, but who knows what your work situation is. But you come in with a missing finger on July 5th, people are going to be like, man, you idiot.
The table completely turns. And with that, welcome to this episode of Norse Code. the sympathy-free version of Norse Code, where we will look at such things as a potential extension for Harrison Smith and Brian O'Neill, a little bit on Everson Griffin, and a bit on the decision that the Supreme Court ruling or the things that are now being caused, rather, by the Supreme Court ruling as far as college athletes being able to earn money from their position in college sports, and how this affects Reggie Bush and the Heisman, and an excellent mailbag. But before we start, just want to thank everyone for listening to Norse Code. Again, really do appreciate it. We are going to have a few live show announcements here in the next episode or so. This will include a show that we're going to be doing the week of the Broncos-Vikings preseason game, and something that we are planning for the Ravens game as well on the East Coast. So pay attention to that. That'll be announced hopefully next episode. So check that out. But before we begin, again, just want to thank you guys. We do have a few people who are now going to be helping us out financially over on Patreon. They have subscribed, and this includes Josh Rolfels, a fellow by the name of Pantalones, and I know I'm not messing that pronunciation up, so don't even write me. I did that one right. I have a habit of destroying names. I even listened to the last episode when I did it, and I'm like, oh my god, how did I mess up Ollie or Allie or whatever? It was like
Eli.
Yeah,
so I normally don't listen during the Patreon thing because I'm doing like last minute show prep. So sorry for all the patrons. I don't pay attention to you.
Doesn't care about you. Arif doesn't care about Patreon people.
And so I didn't miss that. Like I didn't get that you had completely butchered a 3-letter name of, at one point, one of the most famous people in the sport. Yeah, just to add on to that.
It's not like an Eli has ever done anything.
Right. Like the Vikings played the Giants for like 11 years straight for whatever reason, like every single year, like 10 of 11
16,
years.
So week 17 every year.
Yeah.
It made no sense. And of course, I mess up that name that time. We're gonna do Ellie. Ellie is our new Patreon person. So no, Pantalones. Yes, somebody is going by Pantalones and Kevin O'Quigley. Thank you three so much for providing us with a little extra money to be able to continue doing the show. We are really looking forward to some of the stuff that we've got going on this year. So again, thank you so much. Really do appreciate it. Bonus episodes, bonus material. Is available over at patreon.com/NorseCode for Tree Fitty for $3.50 per month. There's a slight discount for a year subscription if you'd like to be a part of that. Go for it. Again, everything helps. Everything helps this podcast keep going and make it so that we are able to put out all these wonderful episodes of Norse Code out to you, the listener. Otherwise, you can go to paypal.me/NorseCode as well, or norsecode.threadless.com and check out the collections section and pick up a shirt. Somebody just picked up a shirt the other day. So again, thank you guys so much. Really do appreciate it. And last episode, or rather last week, I ended up putting out 2 bonus episodes for you guys. So just if you'd like bonus material, I believe there's something like 32, 31 episodes of bonus stuff out there if you are so inclined. Okay, let's take a look at some news and notes stuff. There's not a lot of stuff going on because it is now July and training camp hasn't formally started. It's mainly just a bunch of positioning. Is anything going on in Egan outside of the occasional tweet about a player who wants to come back to the team?
Not as far as I can tell. I have been a little out of it because I've been staying up till 8 a.m. and then going to bed. So if any news breaks in the morning, I'm kind of missing a lot of it. But as far as I can tell, no, there seems to be nothing.
This is the sort of honesty you get from this podcast that demands money over at patreon.com/Norse Code. We're trying, but we can't manufacture news. So all we can do is talk about news that's already been manufactured in the way of extensions. There has been at least a verifiable tweet about a potential extension for Harrison Smith and or Brian O'Neill. And obviously Harrison Smith, in the last year of his deal, Harrison Smith has been a fantastic Viking for a number of years. You could argue pretty successfully that for some of those years he was either incredibly underrated himself or was the best safety in the entire league. And he has stated before that he really wants to retire a Viking. It appears to me that he's probably going to have more of a Jared Allen style goodbye, maybe a small extension, and then find himself another team for a year or two, and then end up, doing the. I don't want to say that he's going to steal the Jared Allen idea of going out on horseback, but that sort of look. But if he was to get an extension, what would the Vikings be looking at as far as what it would hit their pocketbook?
Yeah, I think that you're right that it wouldn't be a very long extension, maybe 2-3 years. The average extension kind of length for a player his age and, kind of the level of regard that he has. It's like Devin McCourty, I guess a little bit Malcolm Jenkins. They were a little bit older when they signed the comparison extensions, but those were about 3 years on average. And I think that 2-3 years, something like that, would be kind of appropriate. I wouldn't say fell off more because it sounds like he's fallen off a lot, and he really hasn't. But McCourty maintained a higher level of play later into his career than I think Harrison Smith has. So it's not a 1-to-1 comparison, but 2-3 years kind of makes a fair amount of sense. And I think he'll probably get an extension in kind of the $11 million range. So that's kind of what we're looking at. And because the extension would only be 2-3 years, you don't get a ton of cap relief that way. But you still get some. And the Vikings now have like a somewhat substantial amount of cap room. They've got $13.5 million, according to Over the Cap in cap space. But one of the bigger kind of cap hits is Harrison Smith. So right now his cap number is $10.2 million. And initially, before you think about the way extensions work in the NFL, you think, well, why would an $11 million deal, end up saving money against the cap? And it's because the way the cap works is that because of the nature of the signing bonus and the low salary in year one of an extension, the cap hit gets pushed back, and so you save money at the beginning in terms of the cap, and then you end up kind of eating it at the end in terms of the cap. So. I could see $10-11 million. I don't think that his salary changes too much. Maybe it drops down to $9 million, but given the expanded cap that we're expecting for 2022, I kind of doubt it. So maybe the money for him stays the same, which as a percentage of cap space would end up kind of, relatively speaking, mean a decline in his overall value. Still the same amount of money going into his pocket. I think you could probably save maybe $5 million against the cap if you did an extension this year. I don't know who that would be for, right? So the Vikings probably want to save about $5 million just for buffer space. They've done that historically over the past couple of years, and they've used that to pick up, various odds and ends as like time has gone on because of like injuries and stuff like that. So, like a $1 million contract I remember like when they got Ben Tate off of waivers or something like that, just like basic back of the roster stuff that they have to continue doing. So they'll keep about $5 million in cap space just for that, which would allow them to use that $13 million or so to, sign another player. Maybe D.D. Westbrook is still out there. We still got a little bit of time before camp, about 3 weeks. So I would not be shocked if they ended up signing another player with that cap space, especially if they did an extension for someone like Harrison Smith.
Has Harrison Smith been paid, I guess, fairly throughout his career? I mean, last episode we were talking about Danielle Hunter and how he has. I don't want to say he's been vastly underpaid, but it seems like he could have been paid much more, and it's just like a question of worth. Do you feel like Harrison Smith has received the amount that he should as a high caliber safety in this league, knowing that safeties are not viewed as highly as they used to be?
I think that's a really good question, because I don't really think that he has. He's probably been a little bit underpaid over the course of his career, because obviously as a rookie on that first 4-year contract, he was underpaid. If we ignore that, because most well-performing rookies, or every well-performing rookie, is underpaid. But if we ignore that, he never took more than like 5.5% of the team's cap space. And if you take a look at some of the really highly paid safeties, so if we take a look at Justin Simmons, or actually Devin McCourty is a great comparison. If you take a look at him, at some point in his career, he nearly hit 7% of taking up the Patriots cap. Or you take a look at Justin Simmons, he's projected to take up on average 8% of the team's cap over the next 3 years. Harrison Smith has never done that. He's never beaten 6%. He's actually been, for the most part, closer to 5.5%. I think he's only beaten 5.5% once. So, I think for the bulk of his career, he's actually been underpaid as a Viking. And now that he's kind of looking at kind of the back end of his career, he's probably never going to be able to make up that money. That's actually a pretty good point, is that compared to his level of talent over the course of his career as a Viking, which I think you're right that, he was one of the top 3 safeties in the NFL. And I did a big story about that back in like 2017 over at Zone Coverage, about how he was probably the best safety in the NFL at that time, and he wasn't getting his due. He never earned 6.5-7% in terms of the team's salary cap potential. Even if you only took a look at his average cap number, or his average salary and not his cap number, it never hit the point where you see with someone like a Devin McCourty or a Justin Simmons or whatever. So from Harrison Smith's perspective, he's probably not getting his worth. Obviously, from the Vikings' perspective, that's allowed them to make investments in other positions. So that's a good point. I hadn't actually thought about it that much from Harrison Smith's perspective, just because, the conversation, like you said, has always kind of revolved around like Stephon Diggs or Danielle Hunter or whoever, where Harrison Smith is getting continuously underpaid in terms of his impact on the team.
And Harrison Smith, too, is one of those players that when he is out, once he's gone, that is going to be a hole that is very noticed. I have the feeling it's going to end up being a bit like the Jared Allen situation, where we used to have a guy for that. We used to have that just kind of be the answer for, we've just had somebody play that role for 10 years, 12 years. And now he's playing for Chicago for a year in an attempt to get a ring.
Panthers for a year, yeah.
he's doing he's hanging out with Justin Fields for a bit. Like, it's discussing draft picks. Yeah, it's interesting, and good for him if he's going to end up getting a little bit of cash here. But a very not a very flashy person, not a very flashy player, but just pretty consistent over the past few years, over the majority of his career, really.
Yeah. I think he immediately made his mark as a rookie. He was a really remarkable rookie, and then I think probably 2 years after that is when you could be comfortable saying he was an elite safety. So it didn't take him very long to enter the conversation as one of the top safeties in the NFL. And this is while like Eric Weddle, Eric Berry, Troy Polamalu, Ed Reed, it's while they were all playing, right? And him entering that conversation at that time as a third-year player was pretty remarkable. And then he maintained, like you said, that level of play for a really, really long period of time. And he's not that player anymore, but he's still pretty valuable. And I think that you're right. When he's off the field for whatever reason, that's a huge hole for the Vikings because of his versatility. I think that you take a look at safeties like Derwin James and how he can be used and how he's used with the Chargers when he's healthy. And you think that, that kind of versatility, he's not as good in man coverage as Derwin James is. But aside from that kind of versatility is just so remarkably valuable to have as a safety. His ability as a pass rusher, his ability in the box, his ability as a free safety, it's kind of defined what the Vikings have done schematically over the years. And he's been a really important part to making sure that pass defense is like number one in the NFL, like it has been.
Plus, let's just throw it out there. The Satan's Crowbar jersey exists, right. And that's reason enough to keep him around for another couple of years.
We saw Satan's Crowbar jersey, right?
We did. That was over at the Seattle game. One of the listeners was there and had his Harrison Smith Satan's Crowbar jersey, which was, I remember texting Dusty a picture of that and him like just dying, like, well, my life is complete.
So good, man. So good.
Well, let's talk about Brian O'Neill as well, because there has also been a discussion, albeit not as loudly, about a potential extension for him.
Yeah, I saw some reports. I don't know if Doogie also said this because he was also the one that was on the Harrison Smith stuff, but saw some reports that the Vikings might be talking to Brian O'Neill about an extension. I can't like verify that or anything like that, but I can say that would make a ton of sense. The interesting question is kind of whether or not, and probably not now that they've drafted Christian Darrisaw, but whether or not it'll match the Ryan Ramczyk deal. So we actually had a listener come in with a mailbag question that references the Ramczyk deal. And one of the most interesting things about the Ramczyk deal, so he's a right tackle just like Brian O'Neill. One of the most interesting things about the Ramczyk deal is that there is a clause in there that escalates his salary by $1 million for every year that he's named an All-Pro at left tackle, first or second team. So he doesn't have to be a first-team All-Pro. And of course, he's a right tackle, right? He's the league's highest paid right tackle with his extension at nearly $20 million a year. So that's ahead of Lane Johnson. And what's interesting is that typically when a player gets that money at right tackle, there's an expectation at some point that they'll move to left tackle. I think that's what happened with Tyron Smith. They moved him to left tackle from right tackle, and they moved Doug Free over to right tackle, making Free the highest paid right tackle in the NFL for a bit before I think it was like Phil Lodeholt took over, and then a right tackle for either the Lions or the Colts ended up taking over for him. But yeah, typically when you get that money, there's an expectation that they'll move to left tackle. And that was a conversation that they had about Lane Johnson, that he would end up moving to the left side. Still hasn't happened yet, but I think is still a discussion for Johnson. So the $18 to $20 million mark is kind of where you expect that. But there's an additional escalator on top of that for Ramczyk, where if he gets moved to left tackle and he performs well there, he gets more money on top of that, which I just find kind of fascinating. So that's probably not going to exist for Brian O'Neill because they drafted Christian Darrisaw, but it was kind of an interesting thought because before the draft, I think that there was some discussion about, hey, maybe the Vikings will move Brian O'Neill to left tackle and then they'll be able to grab a right tackle in this year's draft or something like that. And they may be able to wait in order to do that. And if they wait, that allows them that frees up their first round pick for something else, maybe a quarterback, right? And that might have been the plan if the Vikings did end up executing on the rumored Justin Fields thing, right? Or if they grabbed Rashawn Slater, who a lot of people see as kind of a right tackle, maybe they put him at right tackle, move Brian O'Neill to left tackle. That's probably not going to be it anymore. But I think that Brian O'Neill will still probably stay with the Vikings, even though that kind of hurts his value. Interestingly, if you take a look at SpotTrack's projection for Brian O'Neill, so for Harrison Smith, their projection for him is $10.9 million a year, average annual salary, which kind of aligns with our intuition on it. For Brian O'Neill, it doesn't because they project an average annual salary of $7.6 million over a contract length of about 6 years, which does not make sense to me. The right tackle market is like really screwy just in general, but specifically right now. If you take a look at the right tackle market, you see a $19 million deal with Ryan Ramczyk, an $18 million deal with Lane Johnson. I think we can throw those out because when they sign those deals, there's an expectation at some point that they'll be moved. But then also a $14 million deal for Jack Conklin, which has an enormous amount guaranteed. It's $10 million average guaranteed. So it's $30 million over 3 years is fully guaranteed for Conklin. So he actually has the second highest guaranteed per year. And then Taylor Moton for the Panthers, who has like a franchise tag, I think, or something like that. He's got $13.8 million. And that's a fully guaranteed 1-year contract. So it looks either like a 5th-year extension or a franchise tag or something along those lines. So really you're looking at Jack Conklin, Brian Bulaga, Lyle Collins, and George Fant. And that's $14 million, $10 million, $10 million, and $9.2 million. So that's kind of where we're expecting premier right tackles to go. I don't think that we're going to see something in the $7 million range for Brian O'Neill. I think that last year was probably, quote unquote, the worst year that Brian O'Neill has put together, and it was still a pretty good year. So I think the Vikings expect big things from him. I think he's going to stay at right tackle. I would expect something not closer to 7 million, but closer to 10, 11 million, maybe 12 million. I don't know if he'll get Jack Conklin money. That's entirely possible given how much we expect the cap to explode over the next 10 years. But I I think that we'll probably see 11.5 million or something like that. Maybe a 4-year contract, maybe not 6 years like the projection says. So that's my expectation. I don't expect an escalator in there for left tackle, which I thought was kind of funny. But yeah, that is probably what's going to happen. And because that deal is a little bit longer, a 4-year or a 5-year extension, that'll allow the Vikings to minimize the cost of an extension. So because he's coming off of a rookie deal, the Vikings can't like save money with an extension there because his cap hit right now is about 2.8 million. So they can't extend him and save money. But that extension, certainly possible with the 13.5 million that they have here. But that extension won't be too bad against the 2021 cap if they work his deal to consume part of the base salary this year.
Well, let's take a look at somebody who wants to come back to the Minnesota. Again, manufactured news, but this is July in the offseason, so this is what you're going to get. There has been a bit of rumbling about Everson Griffen, definitely not from the team itself, just from various sources. I believe Mike Florio is responsible for this one again. Just a bunch of smoke, a little bit of fire, maybe a little bit of both.
So this is Mike Florio reporting on something Paul Allen said on KFan, where Paul Allen said that Everson Griffen would love to be back with the Vikings or something along those lines. I think maybe desperately wants to sign with the Vikings, something like that.
Yeah,
was the phrasing. At least that's the phrasing at the headline of the Daily Norseman. We'll link that. But this is like, you're right. This is manufactured news. Like, I think he's willing to sign with whoever's going to pay him. I think that if he could choose his team out of all 32 teams, it would be the Vikings. Paul Allen mentioned that Griffen is apologetic and regrets the tweets that he sent, which if I was trying to sign with a team, I would be too. Literally any team, all my tweets.
Really, can I just delete the whole account? Like, I'm just apologize. I want to apologize for being a part of the cesspool that is.
Yeah, I apologize for being on Twitter.
for creating the email account that is associated with it.
Right. But yeah, sure. I mean, if he was like quite good still, which he's not, but if he was quite good still, I don't think the tweets would matter. But I think that he's in this borderline space where, maybe you could help a team. But you see kind of that erupt and you don't really want to take a chance. So if he was still like a huge asset to have, it wouldn't matter. But that is an issue. But yeah, I think before the show you were like, look, if the Green Bay Packers offered Everson money, you'd play for them.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think that he wants to keep playing football, and I think he wants to keep getting paid for it. I think the Vikings are probably the preferred destination between all 30 teams if they offered identical contracts. But for the most part, it doesn't really matter.
No, it just really seems like a situation where he wants to play somewhere, wants to get paid for it, and if all of those things could align, he's familiar with Minnesota, he's familiar with the coaching, and would prefer to end up over there. I don't know, that really just screams like September, October signing somewhere after someone gets hurt, right?
Yeah, that's kind of what it feels like, and that's kind of what he was last year. So
yeah. That would be my suspicion anyway. Let's talk about the college thing, because this was big news. We actually didn't get a chance to talk about it last episode because there was so much breaking news. But there was a Supreme Court decision that was brought down that ruled in favor of players being able to make money as while in college. And the dirty joke or the dirty secret forever has been college students making money while playing. And when they get caught, it ends up being a stain on the school, stain on the player. It ends up causing problems. People get their Heisman awards taken away. And which we'll talk about in a second. But it turns into one big mess. So what exactly is going to happen with this moving forward?
Yeah, well, so the Supreme Court ruling was fairly narrow, and I think people have realized that now. But when the ruling was first announced, a lot of people were pointing to some of the statements made in the concurring opinion by Justice Kavanaugh. I think it was Kavanaugh, um, and who ended up talking about how if this occurred in any other industry, it would be illegal, and you have to pay the players. Essentially, it was very strongly worded language that you end up having to pay the players. So that is not binding, but it will be cited in future lawsuits if the NCAA doesn't just allow players to be paid directly by schools. Right now, all the court ruling does is it opens up the ability for players to profit off their name, image, and likeness. So they can endorse products. They can receive payment for having their face and name and their likeness in a video game, for example. And it gives them some modicum of control over the amount of money that they bring into a program, because their image and likeness would be used by the school, who would then be able to sign endorsement deals, etc. Some of that endorsement money for schools and some of that sponsor money is going to dry up as it goes to the players instead. But that was kind of where the money was anyway, which is why sponsors are very comfortable moving the money from the schools to the players. So that's something, but it still doesn't open up the possibility of schools yet, right? Well, I mean, the NCAA probably will. I mean, it was kind of like a warning shot. It opens up the possibility of the NCAA allowing schools to pay players directly, which I believe in California, I don't follow college football as closely as I follow the NFL, but in California, it sounds like that's something that those schools will have to reckon with anyway, as that moves through the legal process. But we've seen a number of players announce either relationships with agencies or, more often, announce relationships with brands. I know that Derek King, who's at Texas A&M now? I don't remember. Has signed a deal and then indicated that a certain percentage of the money that he's making from the deal will go to the rest of the players on the squad. That's pretty cool. But I mean, there's people signing deals with brands at kind of the highest level of recognition. I think we're going to see some Nike and Adidas deals announced soon, which some people clarified. It is very likely that players will sign deals with apparel companies that are not signing deals with the schools. And so you could be an Adidas school and a player signs a Nike deal. That said, I can't imagine any Oregon athlete won't sign with Nike. I imagine that's always going to be kind of Nike territory.
Yeah, it'd be real hard. It'd be real hard not to end up going Nike in Oregon.
Yeah, so that I think we're going to find that in a couple of places, and I imagine that teams are already setting up the departments to connect players with marketing agencies, and maybe even those teams will take commission. Who knows? But they'll probably set something up where schools will organize their own department, obviously, in compliance with the NCAA. They wouldn't want to run afoul of the rules. Schools play by the rules, of course.
Sorry, if I didn't laugh there, I probably would have exploded.
Right, yeah. So I imagine schools, unless there's been some ruling that I've missed or some NCAA guideline that I missed, I imagine schools will set up their own marketing departments that will connect players to agencies, and then agencies will be able to contact those schools directly if they want to sign a deal with a set of players or something like that. So that's probably going to happen, and schools will begin pitching players. They probably already have, actually. I think they have already started pitching players on their name, image, and likeness opportunity with their school's brand, as much as they are things like playing time and stuff like that, which sounds like, oh no, where's the game going? But they were basically doing that, but surreptitiously anyway. So that doesn't seem like a huge change to me. So that's nice. One of the conversations that was so this was the kind of the compromise solution a lot of people were talking about a couple of years ago when the discussion about paying college athletes came up. A lot of people were like, well, you can't pay college athletes for whatever awful reason I've come up with. And then someone else would be like, well, look at how much money the athlete makes for the school. And the compromise would be, well, how about, they get to make money off their name, image, and likeness, their NIL rights. But you don't get to get paid directly by the school, which is just such a fake sounding compromise. Like, what's the difference, man? But one of the issues here is that you're less likely to sign an NIL deal as like an offensive lineman or a center, right, than you are as a quarterback. And your image and your sponsorship doesn't necessarily correlate with value to the team. Like, obviously quarterbacks matter more, right? But the proportion by which quarterbacks matter more than, say, an offensive lineman is probably not similar to the proportion by which they'll end up getting sponsorship money. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how that's going to work out, and whether or not the people that bring additional value to the school that does not come from a public kind of facing position, right? Because schools make more money when they win, typically, right? And they'll win because they've got, good players, and some of those good players are going to be playing positions where they don't get a lot of recognition. It'll be interesting to see kind of what's going to be done, if something's going to be done, to kind of balance that value. But yeah, that changed. And that brought up an interesting conversation via Reggie Bush.
So who gets his trophy?
Yeah, I mean, so if you don't remember, Dusty and I way back we came up with a sitcom idea called The Heisman.
2014, by the way.
Wow. Yeah. Where the whole conceit of the sitcom is that Reggie Bush buys a replica Heisman trophy and puts his name on it, and becomes roommates with Vince Young, who in this other world was given the Heisman trophy when it was taken away from Reggie Bush because he was second in votes that year. And so they both have the Heisman trophy, and they both display it proudly in their living room or whatever.
In their same trophy case, yes.
Yeah. And so there's a whole thing about it, right? So that's the setup for the sitcom. We'll probably link the whole bit.
Oh, we're not linking it. I'm including it actually at the very end of this episode.
Oh, fantastic. Okay,
so
great.
People can listen to it. No, just keep in mind,
the audio is awful.
This is 2014 during one of the 2 episodes we ever did that we said to Arif it was okay to call in on his phone. This never happened after this episode.
But yeah, so the antics of Reggie Bush and Vince Young, the Heisman.
Well, you have to like think about a possible situation here of a reunion show.
I would think so. Yeah, this sitcom runs for like 3 years, gets canceled, and then this news comes up, and Reggie Bush in this alternate world ends up getting
HBO Max. HBO Max has got all the reunion shows.
Right. It'll be like oh crap! I forgot the show that took place in my head. Oh, Full House. It'll be like Fuller House. Just a season wrap up reunion show, where Reggie Bush and because remember, in this world, in this universe, the Heisman was re-awarded to Vince Young, and so when the Heisman committee or whatever they call themselves, the Heisman Club, I don't know who awards the Heisman. I know it's not the NCAA. Whenever that committee, so they have to revoke Vince Young's Heisman to give it to Reggie Bush. And now Reggie Bush has both copies of the Heisman Trophy, the quote unquote real one. And we have a discussion about what counts as a real Heisman Trophy and what is in essence a Heisman Trophy. I think that was the first appearance of our Ship of Theseus.
It likely was, because yes, the Ship of Theseus made an appearance there, and I wasn't the one to bring it up. As I so often get accused. Yeah, it then becomes a question of like the interim title and the current title, like in sports, like in fighting, and then the interim title just goes away. Like it doesn't matter because it's been reconciled.
Yeah, especially in fighting, right? Because the boxer stops paying the licensing or whatever it is to quote unquote maintain the championship belt, and so they no longer have it. But everyone recognize them as like the WBA champion lightweight, whatever, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, and so it's a reunion show between Vince Young and Reggie Bush, where Vince Young has to grapple with the reality that his Heisman was taken away and given back to Reggie Bush, who in this sitcom, I imagine, also does not give up the replica, and so just has both Heisman trophies.
Yeah, but he just has them just like, back to back, like Egyptian art. And I don't even think he would take off the Vince Young nameplate. I think he would want to keep that there. Like, they could have the ceremony. Like, in my mind, they're still living together. And they go to the ceremony. There's a whole, like, episode, like, Seinfeld style, of Vince Young going, what's in a name? What's in a trophy? What are we doing? And he brings the trophy to the press conference. He gives it, and like the three of them are up on the dais, and Vince Young gives the head of the Heisman committee the trophy. He then gives it to Reggie Bush, and then Reggie and Vince Young go home in the same car and put the trophy right back where it belongs in the same trophy case, like measuring where the dust is on the trophy case to make sure that it's the exact same spot.
That's great. So I think a great plot to this episode would be that Vince Young doing what Reggie Bush did in making a replica Heisman trophy, but instead of acting as if the replica is the real one, swapping out the real one with the replica and getting nervous as he like stole the trophy in the night, right? Getting nervous to see whether or not the replica trophy will line up with the dust marks of the real trophy when Reggie Bush replaces it in the exact same spot.
It becomes a bit like that Scrubs episode where they lose the dog and the new dog is just a little bit shorter, a little bit smaller.
It's exactly the same. Yes.
I mean, like it's a bit like that where he's just trying to like, wait a second, is that? And then she has to distract him. It's a bit like that. And then somehow they have 3 trophies.
It's perfect. I love it.
This is
also for people who want the actual news, Reggie Bush petitioned to get his Heisman back. The Heisman committee or whatever they're called said no, not until the NCAA reinstates you, which is such a cop-out. My God.
Actually,
just give it to him.
That I don't even think it was that much of a cop-out, or the way that you had portrayed it. Instead of like saying no, they basically just said, we're waiting to hear from the NCAA.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. They were just like, yeah, who knows? It's up to the NCAA to reinstate you.
This has nothing to do with us.
It's like, will you award this independent? You are not a part of the NCAA. You can just decide it matters, and now it matters.
They disagree. They are a part of the NCAA when it counts and when it's beneficial to them. This being this is the also only part of that time that it's beneficial to them to be so.
This is also part of that 2014 episode where it's just like, well, it's not like Reggie Bush evaporated, right? It's not like that never happened. We all saw him play.
Dude existed. Like, what's...
Yeah, he played football while in college against college players who were attempting to prevent him from doing the things that he ended up doing very impressively, I might add. And so it's very weird for the Heisman committee to be like, yeah, man, who knows if you exist? I don't know. That's not up to us.
That's definitely not up to us. So, side note, as we move on to the mailbag here. So I was listening to right before the show, when I clipped the Heisman thing over, and I sent it over to you so you could get a bit of a refresher. You know what was immediately after that on that Christmas episode?
Oh no, what?
The potato salad discussion.
Oh, you're gonna have to refresh me on the potato salad.
Do you remember Dusty freaking out at the potato salad Kickstarter?
Oh my God, he was so mad.
He was so mad at the potato salad Kickstarter, which then became a conversation about how he hated Star Wars, and that was the big reveal to you. So that the 20
that was the reveal.
Yes, that's how that turned out, which ended in a John Kerry quote, which killed you. We have been talking to a corpse Arif since then.
Okay, I'm gonna have to listen to that too.
Yeah, the audio quality of that portion is so much better than like I went in and personally attempted to clean the Reggie Bush stuff up a bit more than it was. But yeah, it's it's a thing. So let's head over to the mailbag now that we have discussed our pitch for the new season of Reggie Bush's The Heisman. Let's go over to Steezo, who asks the first question. The Vikings can have 2 vet players with more than 2 accrued seasons on the practice squad. Of the current players on the 90, who is most likely to take this role like Brett Jones did for much of last year?
That's a really interesting question because the players that are essentially eligible for that, it's a much smaller pool for the Vikings. So almost all of the backups that the Vikings have are fairly young. Or you would not consider them on the practice squad, right? Like, so Sheldon Richardson, for example, is technically on the bench and he's technically eligible for that spot. And not only would he not like make it to the practice squad, somebody would just sign him. But also, yeah, I mean, the Vikings wouldn't do it if they could. I mean, they'd just rather just have him. So last year there were more candidates among potential veterans that'd be able to make it. And as I saw this question, I was kind of struggling to think of who qualifies as somebody that might make it to the practice squad. And I was trying to think, and I couldn't think of a ton of names. Armin Watts, I think, qualifies. And so he's somebody that you might want to do it because you've got, those 3 tackles that are going to be in a heavy rotation. You also want to maybe give James Lynch a shot, maybe give Jalen Twyman a shot. And so this would be maybe a good time for, like, say, Armin Watts, who has 2 years. To maybe hit the practice squad without having to worry too much about him not being able to clear waivers or whatever. So this was kind of a tough question. He was one of the names that came to mind. I also decided that, like, maybe Amir Abdullah. I don't know if other teams kind of see value in him. And so if the Vikings cut him, would he get signed right away? That one is kind of interesting because if a player goes down, if a running back goes down, I think Amir Abdullah would immediately be somebody that the Vikings would want to have back on the roster because they can't really trust Kene Nwangu to play a complementary role to Alexander Mattison right away because he doesn't have a ton of experience at running back. Because he was always either hurt. He only took 100 or so carries in college. So that's somebody to consider. Going back to defense, I think Jalen Holmes is a really great candidate for that because the Vikings have so many edge rushers right now that there's not a ton of room for. I think Jalen Holmes is a cut candidate, but given that there are not that many candidates for one of those 2 practice squad spots, he could actually be kind of the perfect break glass in case of emergency kind of edge rusher where, if you've got 2 injuries, right? If Stephen Weatherly goes down and Patrick Jones goes down, you've got DJ Wonnum and Janarius Robinson, and that's kind of it. And so then you'd want to bring, Jalen Holmes back. So he's a candidate, as could Hercules Mataafa might be a candidate as well. But yeah, there's just not that many players. I think the only other player name I came up with was like Chris Boyd, which doesn't excite anybody, but does kind of fit the criteria. There are also a couple of cornerbacks, so there might not be enough room for Chris Boyd. It depends on whether or not Jeff Gladney lands on the commissioner's exempt list to start the season, and the Vikings don't have to worry about him counting against the roster. If he does count against the roster, then that's you consider Chris Boyd or maybe Ty Smith, who they just signed, I think from Tennessee, who's been in the league since like 2015, and he could potentially be that guy. Maybe Mason Cole, but I think that they just kind of want to make Mason Cole make the team. So yeah, not a ton of players. Like if you take a look at that receiver chart, they're either probably making the team like Chad Beebe and Olabisi Johnson, or not like 2-year veterans like every other receiver. So yeah, I mean, if they sign like Dede Westbrook, then you can add BC Johnson to that list. But yeah, for the most part, there aren't as many candidates for that like there have been in previous years. And the NFL in general is getting younger as a result of the rookie cap.
Next question is going to be from Chris, who asks, if you could interview any Vikings player, coach, or front office personnel, and they would give you a completely honest and detailed answer, but you would have to eat a ghost pepper after each question, who would it be, and what would you try to ask?
We currently have a ghost pepper salsa in the fridge right now that every time we buy a new bag of chips, I use that salsa like once. And then the rest of that bag of chips is devoted to like whatever other salsa, like I think the Cowboy Caviar at Lund's, which is just really good, but I think unfortunately named. But like I do the ghost pepper salsa, and I'm like, wow, this is really good. Oh boy, okay. God, I mean, ghost peppers, man, they're rough. I mean, it would be Rick Spielman, I think. And honest and detailed answers. It's like the first questions would be stuff that kind of relates to the stuff that I like to write about, like my job. So the first question would really be, it would be very broad because you want to be really efficient with this question. And if you get completely honest and detailed answers, you've licensed to be very broad. It would probably be, what are the criteria at each position you use to evaluate players in the draft, right? And that, which is just such a cheating question, right? Because it's so broad. But that's what I would do. I would get a ton of info. And the next question, if I can manage it, right? Like that's the problem, is that after the one ghost pepper, and I can handle spice pretty well. Like there's only been one Nashville hot chicken, they call it, quote unquote, Nashville hot chicken in the cities, that I've actually ever had trouble with, and it was at Blue Door Pub, and it was one of their like specials for that week. So they didn't like bring it back, which is unfortunate. But like, I mean, Luke Inman, who works at Buffalo Wild Wings, couldn't have a bite, or he couldn't have more than a small bite of those wings, and I could go through a couple of those wings, and it was awful for me. But I can have really spicy food, right? And ghost peppers are just a lot. So after I could probably do another question or two. I assume this is like a whole ghost pepper, right? You can't, like, if it's just like a slice, I could go through them, but a whole ghost pepper.
Yeah.
And I assume you have to like chew it.
Yeah, you couldn't just pop it down. And which is kind of my thing on this is, you've seen these like spice challenges before where it's like somebody has like a habanero and puts it down, Scotch bonnet habanero, and then nobody after that goes, all right, I can handle another. Like nobody.
Yeah, with a habanero, yeah, but like with the Scotch bonnet, absolutely friggin' not. No. Yeah, and with the ghost pepper, it's closer to the Scotch bonnet than it is the habanero. Yeah, so we still actually have to get Sam Ekstrom to consume a hot chip, because he lost our season-long betting challenge by like not very much. And if he lost, he had to eat a hot chip from the hot chip challenge, and those are spicier than ghost peppers. But I don't know if people have seen videos of like news anchors taking the one chip challenge, and some of them like throwing up and stuff like that. Like, spicy food can get pretty spicy.
It's the thing, actually. I accidentally just watched the guy who does Hot Ones do that with a wrapper, and the wrapper just spit it out. It's like he took a bite. I don't even think he took like more than like a little bit of it. He took a bite and it all just shot out in front of him. It's like, oh, all right. Dude from Hot Ones was able to handle it, kind of. But
dude. My former debate partner in college, he would always buy these insanely hot sauces and then not like be able to do anything with them, of course. But like they were called stuff like Dave's Insanity Sauce, and they didn't really have peppers in them so much as they had like capsaicin extract in them.
Yeah.
And which is one of the things about the Hot Ones, which is great, is that the hot sauces they use tend to be almost, I say tend to be, but it might almost universally be like genuinely made from peppers. And a lot of like the novelty sauces that are out there are just like literally just capsaicin extract.
Yeah, it's just chemical stuff.
Yeah. Like literally the stuff that they just like put in pepper spray and stuff like that. And I've had that. Like, so we had, I remember, luckily it wasn't before a debate tournament, but I remember we dipped like a tine of a fork into Dave's Insanity Sauce, wiped that tiny amount of sauce into a giant bowl of rice, and tried to finish the bowl, and we couldn't. Like, it's just the tiniest amount. Like you couldn't even weigh it on a scale, honestly. And I mean, the hottest stuff of that hot sauce is just nuts. I think for a ghost pepper, I might be able to make it to question 2. I don't think I'd be able to make it to question 3. And so question 2, I probably want some dirt on the Christian Ponder era.
So tell me, what happened exactly with the signing of Donovan McNabb? Why?
Wait, tell me everything you know about Josh Freeman.
Actually, I think that would be the better choice. Like this is my first one. You have to have it written down because you're not going to remember them.
Right? Yeah. I would be losing my mind. Yeah, but I need to know.
Yeah, like okay, as I am now seeing concentric circles go around me, and as I'm feeling like I'm being sucked up into an alien, spaceship due to the high that I'm on right now, you have to tell me everything about the Josh Freeman era in that football game. And what the locker room was like immediately after that game.
Yeah, and hopefully you'd get answers on like whose decision it was to start him, whether or not there was pressure from you or the ownership, or whether or not Leslie Frazier disagreed with the signing and that's why he chose to start him, right? Like, because that was one of the theories, right? Is that Frazier hated the signing, right? That was the Frazier era, right? Frazier hated the signing. And in order to punish the front, this is one of the theories, in order to punish the front office, decided he would start before he was ready, right? Because he had been in the building for like 8 days at that point. Like he shows up, misses the first game because he's learning the playbook, and then starts the next game Monday night against the Giants. And Eli Manning put in one of the worst performances Allie's.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure the appropriate pronunciation is done here.
Some of his worst performances are some of the worst performances we've seen from a name recognition quarterback, right?
From a guy who's won a Super Bowl.
Right. Yeah. Like Trent Dilfer hasn't had a performance as bad as some of Ali's worst performances. And this was one of the worst performances we've seen from a Manning, including the awful 2015 season that Peyton happened to win a Super Bowl in. And the Vikings still couldn't do it. It's just so bad. This was one of the worst games I've ever seen in my life.
This was the Leslie Frazier Vikings who went 5-10-1.
I watched the CFL. I've watched the XFL. I've watched the AAF. Still one of the worst games of football I've watched the Golden Gophers, man. One of the worst games I've ever seen in my life. The only highlight I can remember from that game, aside from Josh Freeman throwing a football to the moon, was Jared Allen somehow sacking Eli Manning through the left tackle. David, whatever, I think. I remember he earned some recognition as a good left tackle when he wasn't that good because he kept on staying the left tackle for the Giants through Super Bowl runs. But yeah, he sacked Eli Manning through while he was getting successfully blocked.
Yeah, that's our Hall of Fame. That's our Hall of Famer right there. Jeez, God. I was just looking up the box score of that game because I'm an idiot. Marcus Sherrills had an 86-yard punt return that.
Oh wow!
That game.
Sure.
That was the only points the Vikings scored that game. Fun.
That's believable.
Here's something fun. Peyton Hillis scored in that game as a Giant.
Madden cover athlete Peyton Hillis?
The one and only had a 1-yard rush.
Incredible.
The fun stats and enjoyment you can get from just looking up the history of that game would be fun to do. Let's go to our next question, which was the point of all of these jokes this episode. Hey man, Galichek says, for James's mispronunciation corner, first it's Hey man, Galichek. Also, with the Saints signing Ramczyk, pronounced Ramczyk, how does this affect extending O'Neal, pronounced O'Neal? Hugs and kisses.
I mean, we already answered this.
That's terrible. Professor Poop asks, completely hypothetical. Exactly how crappy of a performance would a first rounder have to get cut during training camp? Can't be anything crime related or anything, just straight up performance. For example, if Darrisaw got cut in training camp, how poopy must he perform?
Just performance related. That's pretty interesting. God, who's the former Michigan first round pick that the Vikings cut right before camp? It's like blanking on the name because it's not Ontario Smith. He's the Wizinator, right?
Correct.
Demetrius Underwood, yeah. So he was cut because he wasn't showing up to training camp, and he had all kinds of probably mental health issues that we didn't really have the capacity to discuss successfully at the time. I think he was later diagnosed with BPD or something like that. Just playing. The thing is, from a league wide perspective, Tim Tebow, for example, was not cut during Broncos training camp, and that's a little different because he's a quarterback, and you kind of just give quarterbacks more leeway. But from a performance perspective, I don't know that there's a bottom, right? Because in order to make it into the first round, you need to have been successful in some capacity in college. Because they're not just going to draft a guy in the first round who just has never done anything, either athletically or competitively, right? Either they're a super athlete or they were successful in college. But it's not like they're going to be yeah, this Moritz Berninger guy. I mean, he's a super athlete. It doesn't even count. But it's not like they're going to just sign Babatunde Ayigbusi, right? And draft him in the first round. So there has to be some history that's going to make a team hesitant to cut somebody in the first, who's drafted in the first round as a rookie. Drafted in the first round, all rookies, but cut as a rookie. Yeah, man, if Tebow didn't get cut, I don't know what the bottom is.
I'm just trying to envision Justin Jefferson showing up to training camp last year and being unable to catch a cold. Drops everything. Looks like he spent the last 6 months ripping bong hits and being completely out of shape and not being able to know anything as far as the playbook is concerned or anything like that. It really would have to be a situation a bit like all of those funny stories of the former number 1 overall pick for the Raiders. Jamarcus Russell, who was given blank DVDs of the playbook by his coaches and said, "Hey, come back and let me know what you think of these." And he would come back and say, "Oh, they all look good. I really like the third one you sent me." It would have to be something like that, right?
Right, but that's not really a performance reason, right? That's still kind of a work ethic off the field too is an issue, right? So I mean, I guess you could count that as part of your performance evaluation. But yeah, so the part of this question is if Darrisaw got cut in training camp, how awful must he be performing, or how poopy must he perform? And if he was a turnstile, the Vikings would just be yeah, that was probably his offseason injury. We'll just let him rest for a while. We're not going to cut him. A team will convince themselves. So the first thought I had was, how bad was Laquan Treadwell, right? Because, I mean, he was awful as a rookie, of course, because he was not a very good football player overall.
Yep.
So his rookie year would be a good example of him being awful. And, of course, he wasn't cut in training camp. But the thing is, as I discussed this with you before the show, Treadwell wasn't, terrible in training camp. He just wasn't remarkable, which is actually probably more accurately how I would describe Justin Jefferson than looked like he was taking bong hits all offseason to know the playbook. I think he was fine in training camp, but he wasn't remarkable. But Laquan Treadwell was not interesting for how good he was or how bad he was in training camp. He had a couple of drops, but I wasn't yeah, dude, this guy sucks. I was just yeah, I guess he's not going to make an impact his rookie year.
It does kind of beg the question how bad a first rounder could be, because there are first rounders who don't ever play a game. There are first rounders that don't, that never make it. But it would take a lot for a first rounder not to make the 53-man roster.
Yeah, I just think with the Tebow example, and there's so much at play with the Tebow example because of the strength of his fan base and the position that he plays that makes it a little bit different. But like, nobody who ever reported on any Tebow practice ever came away with a positive impression of him as a quarterback. Now, I guess as a tight end, he seems to be like, whatever, he's fine, I guess. But like, as a quarterback, I haven't seen a single beat reporter ever report from a practice that he looked good in practice.
I think to expand on a point you had earlier in this discussion, a team will do a lot to convince itself that a player is going to make it due to that rookie contract.
Yeah. Especially now. Yeah. Like before they would convince themselves because of just the inherent investment of a first round pick. Plus there's a bunch of guaranteed money. And now it's just like, well, if he turns out he's a huge asset because the rookie contract is so low. So we can absorb a lot just in terms of how bad he might be because you're not paying that much for this. That's a good point too, is that in the modern NFL, it's even harder because of how tantalizing the rookie contract is. Yeah, I mean, like, the Jets wouldn't cut Christian Hackenberg, and he was a second-round pick.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, man.
Legitimately terrible.
Yeah, like, a danger to anyone standing on the sidelines.
If he was to be put into an actual game, could be tried for murder for what he would do for wide receivers going across the field. Just bad. Logan asks, Shelby Houlihan got Olympic trial banned for PEDs that she blamed on pork burritos, which reminded me of the Michael Floyd kombucha incident. What is your favorite or most hilarious excuse for testing positive for banned substances?
Okay, so James has a bunch of great stories on this, and I'm just going to let him riff on it. But I looked up the Shelby Houlihan thing because I wasn't actually following any of this. And yeah, I guess there's like a 2015 study from the World Anti-Doping Agency that were like, yeah, some meats, it'll do it. And I don't think they tested whether or not, I didn't read into this all that much, so I'm being very careful with my words here, but I don't think they tested whether or not consumption of those meats ended up proving or ended up, manifesting itself in a positive test. I think they tested the meats themselves to see if they contained any of the banned, and the substance that she specifically tested positive for can occasionally be found in pork meat, I guess, especially like organ meat and stuff like that. So I guess there's a mechanism by which this is possible. I don't know if I've ever seen anyone comment on the likelihood of veracity of that nandrolone. That's the steroid. If that's true, that like super sucks. Apparently some athletes, and again, I can find an article that backs this up because I saw it not too long ago. Apparently some athletes have successfully appealed their suspension, maybe in the Olympics, maybe somewhere else, on the basis of this kind of testimony. But her appeal, I think, was denied because she ended up she appealed through the CAS, which I think is a Swiss agency. So she didn't appeal through the normal process because of how close we were to the Olympic trials. And that would have taken too long. And so either she was given dispensation for or decided directly to appeal to accelerate the process to an agency maybe higher up in the order. I'm not obviously the most reliable narrator in this one. So look this up yourself. But they denied the appeal. And at one point, the United States track and field said that she'd be allowed to compete while the appeals process was happening. And then they revoked that decision, which that sucks because I don't actually see the downside to that. Like, let her compete. And then if she loses her appeal, eliminate the time. But if she wins the appeal, you gotta, that sucks, right? Like, you could have competed.
Well, yeah, the whole thing is rough. But the thing that's great about athletes that end up testing positive,
they'll say anything, man.
Oh, absolutely. And the best source of this are MMA fighters. Without a doubt, the most creative answers for why you tested hot come from cyclists and they come from MMA fighters, more so the MMA fighters because it's one of the brain damage sports where they get hit hard enough in the head and then get like super creative about some of these ideas. So let's go through some of my favorite MMA fighter excuses as to why they tested hot. First one is Anderson Silva, who is not even an argument, top 5 greatest of all time, and there hadn't even been a question of whether or not he was involved with steroids. He was never like a super like muscly guy. He was super limber. No one ever questioned it. And then he finally tested positive. And the story that he went with, and I'm not making this up, is in the hearing, I'm quoting an article here from lowkickmma.com. The ludicrous story that unfolded during the hearing was that Silva had been given a mysterious sexual enhancement medication originating from Thailand and housed in an unlabeled blue vial by a friend and had consumed it for 3 months prior to his fights without ever stopping to question whether it was above board or not.
Okay, so a couple of questions.
Mm-hmm.
One, how much did the friend smuggle from Thailand that he was able to like imbibe it for 3 months? I guess it's also a question of dosage, but like that seems like something that wouldn't make its way through unless it was multiple trips. His friend just kept on going back to Thailand.
I didn't know it was illegal. I mean, I had somebody mule it back over here, but I didn't know it was illegal. Why would that be weird? The other really great thing about this is that when you end up popping for drugs in Nevada, you have to go in front of the Nevada State Athletic Commission. And during the Nevada State Athletic Commission speakerphone, or during the meeting, the speakerphone system during the hearing played such hits as "Let's Talk About Sex" by Salt and Peppa, "Two Live Crews, Me So Horny," and Shaggy's "It Wasn't Me." Somebody hacked in and was hitting and like was able to turn the speaker on during this, or was like playing it during the questions.
That's just amazing, man. That's incredible.
That's there's that. A heavyweight fighter.
I still can't get over that because like the solution to this problem of his like culpability in a sports scandal is, oh, no. I was taking a highly questionable substance from Thailand. That makes me look better here. That's the story I'm telling to make me look good.
Yeah. just ridiculous. And there's a heavyweight fighter by the name of Frank Mir, who was a former champion, and Frank Mir was famous for a number of reasons, one of which being that he used to just have this idea that he could just take as many punches to the head as possible, and he would just be able to survive it. This did not work out well for him by the end of his career, and was just sad to watch, and probably played a little bit into his excuse for testing hot, which he blamed on tainted kangaroo meat.
Oh, hell yeah. Oh, my God.
His... To quote Mr. Mir, "You're telling me that USADA, the agency that was testing him, are going to go down and, on my behalf, try to test all the different meats to see if, well, kangaroos are wild, and this guy wanted to beef him up, so he bought something that was very abundant."
Very abundant.
"In the study that I did, oral Turinabol, or Turinabol rather, could be bought in powdered form. You could put it in the food and you bulk up your livestock, and you could sell it into the stores because now you get more bang for your buck. An animal that takes 2 years to reach maturity, muscle weight, now in 4 months, he's bigger than he's ever going to be, and you slaughter him. It's common practice."
Learning a lot about kangaroos.
Yeah, later a B sample also turned up positive, and he ended up acknowledging that he was going to have to face a 2-year suspension. Another one was Chael Sonnen, who is famous for being the taking a WWF approach to his promos, and was just like the biggest talker ever. That he ended up finding a job at ESPN as a result of just becoming this microphone, this mouthpiece. He ended up getting popped for testosterone because of hypogonadism. He became the first fighter ever to say that he was taking this because of the, quote, diminished function of his testicles. inhibiting his body's ability to produce testosterone. Basically saying that he had taken a bunch of steroids earlier in his career, and that had caused him to not be able to function anymore.
Yeah. That doesn't sound like something you would make up, though. Like if you're searching for a lie, I would hit on a bunch of other ones before I got to, yeah, I just wasn't performing that well.
But the problem with him in particular was because he talked so much about every topic, and he lied so much about every topic. He was just like in the business.
No, that's a good point.
Speaking,
yeah,
that you couldn't believe a word that came out of his mouth. Like I'm not sure that I would believe anything that he said, even if like his tongue was notarized. Like, dude, like had serious credibility issues by the end. But like the MMA people are great on this on excuses as to why they tested hot. So there's a number of different ones. Those are always my favorites. In fact, it was the first thought I had. It was like, oh, well, MMA fighters test hot all the time. I know there's some good ones. There's some tainted horse meat. There's some tainted kangaroo meat. There's the guy who no longer functions, like that sort of thing. Let's go to Alex, who asks, is Aaron Rodgers going to come back and win another MVP if he loses the match against Tom Brady? Absolutely not. If we learned anything from The Last Dance, he's going to take that loss personally in golf and come back and just do that, which to me screams retirement.
I mean, we're talking about the two biggest chip on the shoulder athletes of all time. Well, I guess Tom Brady is the chip on the shoulder, and Aaron Rodgers is just a grudge match. Like, there's a different energy between the two. Like, Tom Brady feels like, so first of all, they both obviously have chips on their shoulder, but I feel like Tom Brady feels like he's constantly being disrespected. Like, he constantly is being treated like he's still that 6th round pick, and he's constantly having to prove something. Whereas Aaron Rodgers is just like angry that you don't believe him, right? Like, those are different types of frustration. But we're talking about two of like the greatest examples of that at the quarterback position, right? So I think whoever loses that is going to end up being the NFL MVP. So it could be Rodgers, but we can't underrate the possibility that it could be Brady.
No, absolutely not. But I still think this just screams more retirement fun for Aaron Rodgers, just because it would be really fun for Green Bay to have to deal with that for a season or, for the rest of forever. Sure. Nolan Kaler asks, for Reef's baseball corner, who is the Ichiro Suzuki of the 2021 Vikings? And before he says he doesn't know anything about baseball, he already talked about Ichiro on the podcast. Jack Hughes! He's actually referencing one of the bonus episodes where Arif for 2 minutes knew baseball and was talking about Ichiro Suzuki.
I don't know what you're talking about. I have no idea who Ichiro Suzuki is. Is that an electronics company?
No, that is a very successful and reliable single hitter for baseball. He played on a number of teams, most notably for the Seattle. He played for your Seattle Mariners.
Oh my! I knew you were going to do that. I don't know what you're talking about, but the broad strokes are, I imagine, he got, what is it called, on base a lot. By hitting what I believe is called a baseball, but not necessarily very far, but fairly often. This is what I'm gathering from your description of this person named Ichiro Suzuki.
This is prime content right now.
All right, but yeah, so who is a consistent singles hitter for the Vikings? That one's actually kind of tough because I think some of the best answers that you can have don't really actually fit. Like Adam Thielen, for example, feels consistent, but he's like a pretty good big play threat. And so I don't know if I'd put him there because he's been a pretty decent big play threat for a while. And I don't know that you could say, Kyle Rudolph is a really great example either, although he's no longer on the team, because he was really only effective as like a red zone guy. So he'd be somebody that you'd really only bring in when you've got runners on base. I couldn't come up with a I don't know baseball way to say that. So runners on base. When you've got people in scoring, no, scoring position's also a thing that they say in baseball.
It is.
All right, whatever.
And so is base runners.
Great. When you've got people ready to score a point,
run.
That sounds really not baseball. There, I'll go with that.
Ichiro Suzuki was a 10-time All-Star, AL MVP, AL Rookie of the Year, 10-time Golden Glove Award winner, 3-time Silver Slugger Award. I know none of these mean anything to you, except for 2-time.
Does that mean he had to physically wear a Golden Glove?
Obviously, 2-time
like
AL batting champion, stolen base leader, and has the MLB record for 262 hits in a single season.
I actually did not know that about stolen bases.
Yes.
That's interesting. So in terms of like consistency, I guess maybe Eric Kendricks, he does have big plays in him, but really kind of his calling card is more his consistency, his ability to consistently make tackles at or near the line of scrimmage. He doesn't have like a ton of interceptions or anything like that. He can have a couple here or there, but he's really more about denying coverage than he is about like pass deflections and stuff like that. So maybe that's the best example. I think some people might go to Chad Beebe, but honestly, I think that like his drops issue is just too big of a problem to make that comparison. Maybe you'd inherently go to an offensive lineman, but that just kind of feels wrong, right? Like, it just doesn't feel like you'd compare a singles hitter to an offensive lineman.
No, you definitely not. You'd definitely be looking more as far as defensive play. I
think Eric Kendricks.
You could make an argument there. Let's go to the next question, which is from Tep, who asks, for Reef's gardening corner, the tomatoes I'm growing this year are looking dire. They're growing much slower than previous crops. What fruit it does produce is watery. Also, the leaves are curling in on themselves in a way that makes it look like they're dying. How can I save my plant?
All right, so I did not Google this because I know so much about gardening, because why would you ask me about gardening in my gardening corner if I didn't know about gardening? We did grow tomatoes for a while, actually. It was pretty excellent, actually. Like I highly recommend it generally. It's not like a no hassle plant, but it is as far as like, producing stuff that you can use that day, pretty good. Basil's up there too. So my understanding is that this is because of the intense heat that most of the country is experiencing most of the time. Let's say this year, if not every year from here on out. Let's say this year. How can you save the plant? I would probably just put it in a more climate-controlled environment. This I actually did not look up, how to save it. I just looked up what the problem was. So I actually don't know how to save it. I don't know if like bringing it into a climate-controlled environment is the actual solution here, because tomatoes do like it hot. But if it's like way too hot, that's going to happen. They're gonna grow a little bit slower. This can also happen if you overwater them. So if your reaction to the heat is to continue to water them, that might be an issue. So make sure that you don't do that. But yeah, I would imagine that if you have the ability to like kind of bring it inside or something like that and control the climate a little bit more, but keep it in the sun, that might be the way to do it.
Or if it's not something you can bring in, maybe potentially provide some form of artificial shade for it for the after lunch when it tends to be hotter.
Yeah, so like the 2 to 4, or like if you can figure out the angle for the shade so that from 2 to 4 it doesn't get too much sun, that might be best too. But yeah, I think it's probably the intense heat most people are experiencing.
Well, let's go to Bethany for a Reef's parenting corner. My 2-year-old refuses to nap on the weekends. How long can I leave her awake in her room before there's risk of psychological damage?
So James tells me that you could just do this. That you can, that's just a thing that you can do. Where you could just like leave. It's called crying it out, right?
Yeah, it's a version of that. It's letting them cry out, and it's much worse for the parent than it is for the child, as it turns out. But it is that sort of thing that hurts, especially because a crying child is supposed to invoke certain feelings inside of a parent, and this is one of them. So it's rough, and the whole kid nap thing is so difficult and so annoying. So really, it's difficult, but you're not necessarily going to be harming the child in such a way. Dusty and I, years ago, like I'm talking about parenting.
Raised a child.
Yeah, exactly. Sold him. It was tragic. It was a very nice couple. Dusty and I once got onto Drew McGarry's question and answer thing.
The Jamboree?
Not the Jamboree, the other one. We used to read his mailbag. I think it was like a Tuesday mailbag, and I asked a parenting question because I was being driven insane by something I had to do, and it involved a kid basically crying out. I was trying, those like blue bulb sucker things that are used for like a kid's nose. I say to the person in charge of the parenting corner.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Man.
Oh God, I hate you so much. So there's these blue bulbs that exist in order to like clear out a kid's nose, and they are functionally useless. They do not work the way they're supposed to. But when you hold a kid down, a kid wants nothing to do with his stuffed up nose to have something shoved up there, and so he'll fight and scream and fight and scream. And when I was doing it, it felt like I was interrogating the child like a prisoner. Like I was trying to find out where the nuclear secrets are. Like, where's the missing Iranian? Tell me, child. What did you do with him? To which Dusty and I sent in the question to Drew McGarry. It was like, am I leading my child down a route of like CIA enhanced interrogation? Like I needed to know if there was a way out of this, because it was just, you'd need a minute afterwards of like kid freaking out and you just going into like the bathroom with the door shut, looking in the mirror, just like, I can't believe I just had to do that to somebody.
Yeah. So Bethany, the answer to your question, we've come to a consensus, is to commit war crimes.
Yes. And if you find that missing Iranian, let me know. We are going to go to the next question, which is Kyle Wilkin asking the best summer dessert and what was on your menu for the 4th.
Freezy Pops might be the best summer dessert.
That
might just be nostalgia talking.
For whatever reason, I realize it's super easy, and I have like more kids than I probably should. So when it comes to desserts, it's all like, hey, what's the most efficient and like easiest thing I can do? Honestly, I still have a love of like a root beer float, and it's so easy to do that it's a truly underrated summer dessert.
Yeah, and also a root beer float, what's really great about that, not that there's a huge price difference or anything like that, but you don't have to like spring for like really great ice cream or anything like that. In fact, it's probably a little bit better that you don't, because expensive, better ice cream or higher quality ice cream has a lower air content and a higher fat content, which is really great as ice cream, but you want a little bit more air in the root beer float for the ice cream for the root beer float. So you don't have to spend up on the ice cream either. You should get pretty good root beer, but you don't really, like, good root beer doesn't cost that much more than like A&W anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, that's a really great idea. Like I said, Freezy Pops are good. I don't know, like, just don't overthink, like, best summer dessert. Like, I've had a lot of really great summer desserts. Some of them are pretty heavy, even if they're cold. So like, I wouldn't call them necessarily summer desserts, but my favorite dessert was probably, like a brulee banana cream pie that they have over at Eli's East, which they used to be like right across the street from where I lived. But like in terms of like summer desserts, I think of stuff like ice cream sandwiches and stuff like that, like stuff you don't have to. And you can like make your own ice cream sandwiches, and they're kind of just a completely different product than the ice cream sandwiches that you buy, which I also love. But like you make a chocolate chip cookie using one of the cakier chocolate chip cookie recipes, and just mold some ice cream around that. But yeah, I wouldn't overthink summer desserts. As for on the 4th, honestly, didn't go all out, just made some burgers.
I ended up trying a couple of things because I was curious about how it was going to end up tasting. I ended up finding a recipe for grilled and smoked barbecue shrimp over on How to Barbecue Right. So I ended up doing that. It didn't turn out as flavorful as I wanted, which is a little confusing to me. I think maybe I needed to add a little bit more spice to it or add a little bit more Worcestershire, but it ended up turning out okay. It wasn't great, but it was okay. I ended up making what did I end up making for I think it was pork chops for the kids, and then I ended up making a ribeye for me, bone-in ribeye for me, and a New York strip for her, and just heavily salted and peppered on it. But that turned out okay. I was not complaining, and because of the sheer amount of food we had, I ended up having the rest of the ribeye in a sandwich today for dinner. So it ended up turning out pretty well. Let's go to Logan, who asked a question that we got earlier last week, and said we were gonna really focus on this one. Logan says, "I need to make a dinner for 8 while at the lake with the in-laws. Tacos and grilling are out. What do you suggest that I can do that will still wow but be relatively easy?"
So the first version of this question, when it was submitted to us, it said like it was a typo, and so it was just tacos and grilling, and I was like, oh. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. If you want something that includes grilling and tacos, I would absolutely recommend a steak fajita using a skirt steak. And Alton Brown has a remarkable recipe where you cook the skirt steak directly on the coals. It's incredible. I've done it a couple of times. I haven't had better fajitas than that. But then you clarified and said tacos and grilling are actually out because just the way that typo worked out was that it seemed like that was the option instead of the anti-option. So that's a problem. But I don't know, we've recommended, like, in terms of like, hey, what's good for a large number of people, that's relatively easy. And I don't know, we've recommended like pot roast in a slow cooker for so long, on this show. Like that's the standby response to this. And like, yeah, dude, pot roast is and it doesn't have to be in a slow cooker. Like for 8, you're getting to the point where a lot of slow cookers are too small, which sucks. But even still, I think you can get a meal for 8 out of that. But if you can't, even like a heavy-sided pot with a lid, you can just put in a low oven at like 250 for like forever, and then finish it off at like 350 at the very end. But like, yeah, a little bit of red wine, a pot roast, some root vegetables, and a lot of salt, obviously, a little bit of pepper. And whatever herbs and spices that you like, just make sure that you put some in there. Like, it could be thyme, rosemary, parsley. I don't really care. Well, not parsley, but, just whatever you like with meat, and especially beef. And it makes itself. Just look up like a pot roast recipe, either in the oven or not, and make sure you get something, a cut of meat that has a lot of connective tissues, like, ground chuck, or chuck is a pretty good example of that, but has a lot of connective tissue. And is generally pretty flavorful, and that connective tissue will turn into gelatin. And if you really want to impress them, you can make it beforehand, the night beforehand, refrigerate it, and then all you do is heat it up the next day, and it'll taste better after you heat it up because the gelatin has had a chance to permeate everything and then firm back up. But yeah, that's our go-to for something that's pretty easy and still wows people.
And if you're doing the lake thing and want to try to embrace that, you could also go the route of like putting some cod, like you could go some fish, either some like cod or some walleye. Walleye is a little bit harder because there's a lot more bones involved, but you can typically find cod fillets that have already been pre-boned, so you don't have to worry about that. And just put it do a little bit of a bake, a little bit of lemon pepper, maybe some garlic. And do that with some nice potatoes, and just pay attention to the temperature on it. Cod is pretty forgiving, and if you pay attention and don't overcook it, it's not going to be all rubbery and everything. It'll still be good, and there'll still be some decent flesh to it. So, that is a possible option. Get some lemon on it, get some pepper, get some garlic, and call it good. Maybe saute some tomatoes with it too if you want, just to be just for a little bit of like extra acidity or something. But it's an option.
Cod's pretty forgiving. It's a lot more forgiving than like salmon.
Yeah, exactly. Salmon, you really have to pay attention to the temperature. Cod, you can fudge it a little bit, but salmon,
yeah, it's still a fish. I
mean,
you can screw it up a lot easier than like a chicken thigh or something like that.
Exactly.
But, and if you really want it to be foolproof, then yeah, chicken thighs. But I think those examples are pretty good. Also, side note, and of course I did this. While I was in Iceland, I picked up a book on the history of cod, and I read all the way through it. It was fascinating. The book is called Cod. I don't know how else. It was good. I am surprised that I was riveted by it, but I'm a nerd. So if you ever want to know more about cod, this book doesn't really have recipes, so it's not really an answer to your question. But like, if you ever want to know more about cod, information's out there.
I was going through a couple of my recipe books looking for something here, I said I would, and I broke out Matty Matheson's Homestyle Cookery, which I have a copy of. And as you're going through this book, there's all these like great images and some really, really nice looking food and all this, and you forget who wrote the book. And I came across one of the lines, one of the intros, because there's an intro to every single recipe, and I can't repeat what was written on the show because I don't. There's more f-bombs in this one paragraph of a cookbook than probably should be legal. But it was just like, oh, I had forgotten what I was doing, and my wife was like, my wife asked, "Why are you laughing over there?" It's like, "Oh, I'm reading Matty Matheson, attempting to tell me why lamb chops with a Scotch bonnet pepper sauce would be a good idea to make." Let's go to Christopher Wiley, who asks, football question. Various analytics groups have indicated the importance of the safety position to the modern NFL, yet the Vikings haven't drafted one in the first 2 days of the Zimmer era. Is this a blind spot, function of the value versus draft position, like kickers, etc.?
I wouldn't say that this actually tells us very much about like the actual the actual value of a safety, or B, whether or not the Vikings are doing a really poor job with this. I think the Vikings think that they've got an evaluative advantage. So, for example, the fact that they hit on Anthony Harris might give them a lot of confidence. They kind of hit on Epps from Wyoming, although he didn't get to stay on the team. Philadelphia snatched him up. But I think that they think that they've got a good process here. So I think that's part of it. But, I mean, you could argue it's a blind spot because Mike Zimmer did basically say outright, hey, safety is one of the positions that's not as important, when we were asking him about Anthony Harris back at the Combine, back when reporters could ask coaches questions at the Combine. And so, yeah, it might be, but that year they also franchise tagged Anthony Harris, right? So it's not as if they didn't value the position enough to invest in it, and it's not as if Xavier Woods was necessarily a bad investment either. I think we'll basically have to wait until they lose Harrison Smith for us to really see. And who knows if Mike Zimmer is going to be the head coach anymore when that happens. But I don't really think so, because they are very comfortable paying Harrison Smith. I mean, they've kept him, right? So I don't know that this is really a blind spot. Maybe it is a function of the way safeties are drafted, because we're not seeing a ton of them drafted in the first round. And for them to be drafted in the first round, they have to be kind of like a Derwin James type. Or I guess Jamal Adams was drafted in the first round. I don't know if that was worth it. But, well, I mean, I guess they got a first round pick back. So, but, yeah, I think that this is more a product of the Vikings thinking they have an evaluative advantage, which I'm not confident is the case. And also that more talented safeties tend to be found later in the draft than at other positions that are premium.
Is that a bit like the kicker situation, where nobody typically ends up drafting a kicker super early because you can pick them up later?
Yeah, that's part of it. And then also what distinguishes it from the kicker situation. So aside from like the Buccaneers or the Raiders drafting a kicker in the first and second round once in a blue moon, yeah, I mean, the earliest kicker go tends to be the fifth round. The earliest punter go tends to be the fourth round, unless it's the Jaguars. Yeah, I think that's part of it, but I think part of it's also that you can actually probably identify a good safety a lot easier than you can identify a good kicker. It's very difficult to identify good kickers coming out of college. Very difficult, which is why undrafted kickers tend to outperform drafted kickers, because of just how remarkably difficult it is to distinguish between good kickers.
Question before we move on. They've talked about moving the combine, or they've allowed it to happen so that the combine can move to another place. Do you feel like they're doing this in order to prove that Indianapolis is where it should stay? Like you have it 1 year somewhere, like, oh my God, we never want to do this again?
That would be interesting, but I don't. That doesn't feel like the NFL. Like, I think if they moved it somewhere else and it was a disaster, like that would be an issue. But I think they saw the success of moving the draft, which I don't know if it actually brought in more revenue, but it seems like they're very happy with it, and decided to keep going with it without and this is clearly more a money move than it is like a football guy move because, and I kind of detailed this when the news was announced on my Twitter account. This is not a very good football guy move. It's like logistically just like a really bad idea. For people who somehow listen to this podcast, which we have people who don't follow, who don't even have a Twitter that somehow found this podcast, which thanks. But for people who don't, the reason it's a logistical nightmare is because Indianapolis is like uniquely well suited for this type of event for a lot of reasons. Aside from the fact that it's like centrally located, as a city, it is set up to host events and especially athletic events. So the center of the city is near this giant convention center. There are not many cities with convention centers this large. So for people who are like not familiar with the Indianapolis Convention Center, while the Combine was happening there were 3 other events and they did not run into each other. There was enough space for all of them. It's huge what it is. And the convention center is attached directly to a number of hotels that are all centrally located to the city. Not only that is like good to have. It's not like necessary to hold like a really great event, although man, does it get really annoying if you can't do that. Not only that, the medical facilities are also uniquely well suited to bring in a ton of players and evaluate them using some of the kind of specialized equipment that you need. You don't need to ship it across the country, and you get through a lot of players really quickly. It's not necessarily about the quality of the hospital system, although that's pretty high. It's about the capacity of the hospital system. And so you can do it in one hospital and you can do it quickly. And not a lot of cities have that kind of capability. Hosting the Super Bowl or hosting the draft is way different than hosting the Combine because you have to process a lot. It's not just about your ability to hold a lot of people, because New Orleans is really great at hosting the Super Bowl, but you don't have to have everybody stay at the same 3 hotels for the Super Bowl. They can go to whatever hotel they can go to, and you don't have to like logistically coordinate through all of those people. Here, you have to bring everybody through the same process at the same place at a specified time. And it does happen over the course of a week. It's not like all 300 players or however many people are invited to the Combine go to the hospital on the same day. But hospitals, just as we learned, don't necessarily have the capacity to have all of these people come in all at once and do the same thing. And that's the thing. Like hospitals can bring in a ton of people at once, but it's not necessarily for the same thing. So that's one of the problems. And then, of course, like I said, it's centrally located across the NFL. Plus, there's always this like desire for the NFL to have data consistency. And so for the most important prospects, the ones that are invited to the Combine, they're literally running on the same field, whereas different fields will have different effects and stuff like that. So there's like a lot of that goes into it. And I didn't even go into necessarily all of the details, but yeah. So is the NFL trying to prove that it can go into that it should stay in Indianapolis by holding it somewhere else and having it fail? I don't actually think so. I think this is a money-making decision. I think they think that by moving the Combine around, they can kind of hype up a city and bring in more TV revenue. I'm not actually sure why that would be the case, but like that, I think that's a thing they think, and I don't really love that approach.
What are the Vegas odds that it's going to be Vegas?
Next year, low, but in the next 4 years, pretty high.
Yeah, I would imagine that for whatever like that seems like the only place that they would want to get this done too. Christopher Wiley, quick question. Tomorrow is going to be one of those 90s again where I live. What are some good main courses that don't require a grill or heating up the house? Hit up the slow cooker, or salads. Salads do help, especially with this sort of thing. Maybe you fry some chicken, and that could be something, or you do like a lemon ricotta pasta and spinach thing, which would be
I would look into cold noodle dishes that like especially Japanese cold noodle dishes, or a chicken pasta salad. Those are nice, relatively cold. I mean, obviously you have to heat up the chicken and boil the pasta, but it's not like you're leaving an oven on for like 4 hours or anything like that.
No, the range is your friend on that. Let's go to Tommy Gunn, who asks, what's your favorite Animal Crossing exploitation glitch? I joked when I sent out the mailbag mailbag tweet that if we didn't get questions, I was going to have to sit and talk about my Animal Crossing island for enough hours where people were going to start canceling their Patreon subscriptions. So appreciate that, Tommy Gunn. Using an app to find out where where I can sell the turnips has been my favorite. Using an app to travel to someone else's island to sell at a higher rate is something that works. I have more money than I know what to do with in the game, so I have I made my millions. The first million's always the hardest, obviously, but I earned my millions selling pumpkins, selling turnips, and deep sea diving. So those would be my suggestions as far as that. I dedicated a large chunk of my island to pumpkin selling. So there's that.
Yeah, no, totally, dude. Yeah. How about that, Tom Nook?
I think I joked the other day I had more money than Tom Nook. I needed something to like distract me over the last year of COVID stuff, and I have too many hours, quite frankly, have been spent on that stupid island. Don from Ohio asks, Arif's neighbor etiquette corner. If you are surrounded by a bunch of Karens who hate fireworks, what's the latest you would shoot fireworks to rile them up?
I'm not about that. Whatever.
You much more believe in passive aggressive as opposed to crossing the line here, because I think that would cross a bit more.
I think, yeah. Well, and so like you don't know why somebody's having problems with fireworks, right? Like, especially in Minneapolis, there are a lot of people that, I think for fairly obvious reasons based off of what happened last year, we're not like super into it. But yeah, I mean, you don't know why somebody's not into fireworks. So I'm not about that. If they're annoying me outside of that, I would do something else, because the thing about fireworks is that if they're causing problems for somebody directly that you know that you want to cause problems for, they're also probably causing problems for other people that you don't want to cause problems for. So I would say don't do that. Not just because of like veterans and pets and stuff, but because you never know what's going on in somebody's life.
Yeah.
Sorry, Don.
Yeah, that said, 12:30 would be about as late as I would go.
Yeah, I think after that, like you're gonna have to deal with police.
Yeah. Also, finally, from Don from Ohio, thoughts on the first 3 episodes of this season's Rick and Morty, and why is season 2 the best of the bunch?
Episode 2.
Oh, sorry, episode 2.
I haven't actually finished season 3 of Rick and Morty, so I haven't even watched this season.
That's too bad. What I will say is that while I agree to a certain extent that episode 2, this is the spoiler-free version of this. Episode 2 was fantastic. It was absolute chaos, and I loved it. But I felt the same way after episode 3 that I did after the Face Sucker episode last season. When afterwards I just went, oh my god, that was brilliant. That was so well done. That was so hilarious. I don't know what to do. Like, this is almost too good. Episode 2 of this season was just all about like not knowing what was going on. And episode 3 had this like beautiful narrative of, oh no, this is becoming relatable, isn't it? Oh, this is too bad. So I guess that's my take. This season has been good. I've enjoyed it. It seems to be moving toward a bit. It seems to be moving more in a way from seasons 1 and 2, where it's becoming like Rick becoming more of the problem than the solution, or like the guy in control of everything, and that's been good. That said, episode 1 was awesome, and I want to be able to control the police. And that is going to be it for this episode of the Return of the Heisman, the manufactured news stories and off-season stuff that we can possibly do. There was not a lot of on-topic stuff, because there just is not a lot of on-topic stuff. But hopefully you enjoyed it. Reef, what do you have to plug?
The Vikings training camp guide is, I should say, coming out, but I think we actually published the first, and I haven't promoted it at all, so I'll promote it tomorrow morning. But so in previous years, it used to be all at once, where all 90 or so scouting reports, closer to 87. This year it'll be closer to 83, I think. I don't know. It depends on how many specialists I don't write about. But it used to be all at once, where all 85, 87, whatever scouting reports for every player that the Vikings have on their roster, aside from the specialists, would come out. Now we're doing it in waves. So right now, you head over to theathletic.com/author/Arif-Hassan, and you can see already the quarterback scouting report. The next one up will be running backs. After that, it'll be wide receivers and so on down the line. But that's over The Athletic. If you want to get a handle, especially on the players that are a little bit less well-known on the roster, and have an understanding of what their strengths and weaknesses are, head over to The Athletic. It'll be kind of the most exhaustive guide you'll probably see for any team on all of these players, but especially for the Vikings. It's something I'm very proud of.
Remember when this was like your big moneymaker of the year? This was like your big thing every year?
Yeah, I would put it together in a PDF. There would be companion articles, and I'd sell the PDF directly, or we would provide it to patrons. It was huge, yeah. That was the thing that actually made me money for a couple of years. Like, I was not making money as a blogger for a lot of years, but the training camp guide was the thing that I would put together and people would pay for.
Yeah, it was the big thing. So if you're interested in all that, check out over at The Athletic for all of that. So for Arif, my name is James. Thank you guys so much for listening, and please remember to punch reality right in the face. And we will be back in 2 weeks. Norse Code is the largest and only division of Norse Code LLC. You can find Norse Code on the Daily Norseman, SB Nation's official Vikings blog, at dailynorseman.com. You can also find it on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Stitcher, or wherever fine podcasts are aggregated. Our Vikings blogger extraordinaire and generally useful human is Arif Hassan, and he can be found on Twitter at Arif Hassan NFL. You can also find his written work at theathletic.com. I am your podcast host and producer, and my name is James Pagashnik. You can find me at the show's official Twitter feed at NorseCodeDN or my personal account at BigMono. If you'd like to donate a few bucks to the show, you can make your one-time donation at paypal.me/NorseCode, or you can make a recurring monthly contribution by visiting patreon.com/NorseCode. A donation of $3.50 per month does get you bonus material from the show and much more. Any questions or comments that won't fit in a tweet can be sent to norsecodepodcast@gmail.com. On behalf of the Norse Code staff, we thank you so much for listening.
Our formula is this. We go out, we hit people in the mouth.
And now, as promised, the Vince Young, Reggie Bush, Heisman conversation featuring Dusty and Arif on a phone that sounds a little rough. This does go on for a while, but I promise it's worth sticking around for the ending.
Actually, I feel like if anyone got that message, it was Reggie Bush.
I mean, okay, so if you look up the 2005 Heisman winner, obviously it'll be like vacant. But somebody's gonna, like, right next to it'll be like, Reggie Bush won this award, but then he had to give it away. So Reggie Bush still won the award. Like, no.
Yeah, he won it, he just doesn't have it.
Yeah, no one's gonna be like 100 years from now, no one's gonna be like, yeah, I wonder who, there's a blank spot for the 2005 Heisman. I don't know who that is.
Well, the people that are going to miss it most, and this is why it's just such a annoying and, spiteful and mean, like, teenage girl thing for the NCAA to do. The people that are going to miss it the most are going to be his, like, kids and grandkids and stuff when they just don't have that trophy.
Yeah,
like,
you can't. Yeah. Well, if that happens, like, in that situation, what I would do is I would just ask a trophy maker to just make it. Right? Like, if I'm Reggie Bush, I reserve enough money aside for a trophy maker.
Why don't you pick up an Oscar while you're at it?
Well, I mean, but you won the Heisman. It's not the same.
Why? This would be... I'm actually going to write this down. I think we should dedicate some time to the metaphysical, like, implications of winning an award and then having it taken away and then just making another one for yourself.
Well,
is it still authentic? Like, does it still possess the awardness of it?
It's somewhat similar to the ship riddle, right? For, like, the Greeks, when you had this, like, legendary ship, but it, fell into disrepair, so they kept on replacing parts.
Oh yeah, how many pieces of the ship can you take away before it becomes a different ship?
Yeah, and obviously there's no answer to it, but for Reggie Bush, the answer is, it's my ship, fuck you.
The answer is one trophy. One $25 trophy.
Well, I mean, I would invest a lot of money to make it as close to the Heisman as possible. So maybe a $50 trophy. But
Right, you go to a bronze worker and you're like, how closely can you replicate the Heisman without inviting trade infringement concerns?
But okay, so 25 years from now, right? Reggie Bush has a fake trophy in his house, and
No, it's a real trophy. It's a fake award.
fake.
The trophy physically exists. Like, you cannot occupy the same physical space as the trophy, but it was not awarded to you. You just went and bought it.
Well, this is another metaphysical discussion because what defines trophy, right? Some of it has to involve the award that goes. It's not a trophy if it doesn't have an award attached to it, right?
No, it's still a trophy. You can just go and buy a trophy, but it's not an award because no, you can. You can go to, they have trophy stores. You can buy a lot of trophies if you want. I don't know if you knew this. I thought you coached debate.
Okay, actually, did you know our coach got so upset about winning the Team Halloween award that she did do the thing that we're suggesting Reggie Bush do with the Heisman? You went to a tournament and you clearly were the best dressed team or whatever, and we didn't win the award because some fucker dressed like Zorro won it. And he was like some dude who dressed like Zorro, and then his friend in a poncho. And they were like, well, that's clearly the best team award. And we were like,
That's racist.
we look like a McDonald's Happy Meal. That's what we went at. And we're hey, all 18 of us. Not even two dudes in a poncho. That's stupid. And so clearly we were better. But I was like, it's Halloween. I don't really care. But the coach was so upset that she went out and she bought a trophy and then entitled it the Egan Wildcat Team Halloween Costume Award 2004. And it's in the trophy case in the building at Jefferson High School. It's in the trophy case for the debate team. And you can look at it and you can think, what? I can't believe they won this. Or whatever.
Well, I can't believe they were awarded this bogative trophy.
But yeah, okay.
But see, I would say that one counts because she didn't buy it for herself. She thought you had been unfairly treated, and so she bought the trophy and then awarded it to you, at which point it became an authentic award, and the trophy conferred all the benefits of the award that she was
but it's
trying to bestow upon you.
Right? Because it's in the trophy case, and people assume that the people at Egan tournament awarded the trophy, when in fact it was a massive conflict of interest, and the person awarding the trophy happened to coach the team. It is still a misrepresentation.
But at least it has it at least has an ersatz authenticity to it.
Okay, sure, yeah.
Which I can't believe I just said ersatz authenticity.
it has sort of a chintzy, realistic feel to it.
It's just got a delightful real fakeness to it.
But okay, so 25 years from now, people are touring Reggie Bush's home. Maybe he lives there, right? And or maybe a granddaughter brings a friend over, and they look at the Heisman Trophy, and then the friend goes back home and then tells his or her dad, and the dad goes, wait, wasn't he stripped of that trophy?
Didn't he give that back? And the granddaughter is like, to who?
Because here's the thing is, I think this would make a lot more sense as a problem if they simply just gave the trophy to Vince Young, right, instead of not awarding it to anybody.
But that takes away the teen girl squad aspect of it. The NCAA can't be, the belle of the ball. They can't lord it over people if they don't
You just take it away and if you can't have it according to our rules, then no one can have it according to our rules.
Exactly. How else will anyone learn a lesson?
Well,
if we don't go around making examples out of people.
How is that not a lesson? You still lost the trophy.
I guess
and
it would.
Award, because there are two distinct things in your mind.
I guess it would belie the meaninglessness of it. I don't know.
All it would do was add meaning if you just gave it to Vince Young that year. If you were like, no, Reggie Bush doesn't win it because he was an illegal college participant. Vince Young, for some reason we are convinced, was legally a college participant.
So wait. So So Vince Young gets the trophy, and it's the actual Heisman trophy.
he gets the actual trophy.
The one they gave to Reggie Bush, right? Like, it's the same one,
Yeah,
and they just, crossed his name out and wrote in Sharpie, Vince Young.
They would be a little more classy than that, but yeah, functional.
But what if Vince Young then gave the trophy to Reggie Bush?
Whoa. Well,
Like,
so it changes like the thing, right? Because we're worried about the authenticity. Well, I'm less worried about the authenticity of the trophy because, to me, the trophy represents being recognized as the best college player in football, which he was. There's no question about that. And then the trophy is a physical manifestation of that, right?
yeah, so if we're talking about actual authenticity of the award, then Vince Young would be, like, righting a great universal wrong.
Potentially, it still says Vince Young on it. That's weird.
Get-
I think that's weirder if Vince Young gifted you the trophy because he thought you deserved it, because you did, than if you went to a trophy store and got a perfect replica, at least with your name on it.
But if you did that, but if you were Reggie Bush and Vince Young did that for you, then you would have two choices. You could either go to a trophy store and buy him a nicest second place Heisman winner in the world trophy and give it to him.
Oh my God, you are awful.
Or you could just leave his name on the Heisman as a token of your esteem for him.
Well, God, that is nuts, because all that would do is force people to ask, wait, did you steal this from Vince Young? Or this is worse because Reggie Bush clearly has a successful NFL career while Vince Young has been scrounging for money. Did Vince Young pawn it off and sell it to you? Or, this is even worse. Did Vince Young auction it off and you happen to be the highest bidder?
Vince Young hawked it.
Can you imagine if Reggie Bush was immediately notified of the fact that Vince Young in this mythical universe, now the winner of the Heisman Trophy, is in such financial trouble that he has to auction it off, and being made aware of the fact, decides to go to the auction and bid more money than anybody else to win the Heisman Award that he had previously...
So do you get to put your name on it finally if you win the Heisman in an auction?
And you don't be the word to your grandkids.
So poor Vince Young has to sell Reggie Bush's Heisman Trophy with his name on it, with Vince Young's name on it, just so I have the story straight, because this is getting complicated. So Vince Young sells Reggie Bush's Heisman Trophy with Vince Young's name on it on eBay, and Reggie Bush wins it a second time. But then there's an issue with his PayPal account.
Oh no.
And so he gets the Heisman taken away again.
Oh my God.
Your backup payment method could not be confirmed and your account lacks the funds necessary. Negative feedback has been left on your eBay account.
Reggie Bush's eBay account. So do you think if he bought that Heisman Award in an auction and won it, and it was for some reason he did not get rejected or whatever, do you think that would be more authentic to display in a trophy case than the situation that exists now, where no one has the award, but he makes a perfect replica and puts in his own trophy case?
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
Yeah. Because if we assume the word award to mean a conference of honor, that is represented by a statue or whatever, and and trophy just means the statue itself.
Yeah.
Then if anybody asks Reggie Bush a question, he can just be like, "Yeah, I won that trophy. It was totally awarded to me."
Yeah, because Reggie Bush is really into semantic games like that.
But this was never about him, as much as the NCAA would like to make it about him.
True.
This is about setting an example.
I just feel like if the award goes to someone else, if the NCAA was like, you know what, Vince Young, Here you go. Here's the physical trophy. It's got your name engraved on it. There was no eligible player that received more votes than you for the Heisman Award. Here you go. And Reggie Bush buys it or whatever and has it, right? I feel like for some reason, and I don't know why, although this is what the entire conversation is, and I don't know why I'm feeling about things, that is less authentic than if nobody gets the award and he just makes a replica of himself to represent the fact that people recognize him as the best player in all of college football.
But then, I mean, you...
Okay, also, another thing that we haven't considered...
You run into the time travel problem where if you...
clause in the Heisman, which, by the way, you would violate if you had won it in an auction or if you, of course, produced a replica trophy for yourself.
Well, that's not a problem for Reggie Bush now, is it?
Well, but it doesn't mean he doesn't deserve the Heisman Award now, right?
He already fucked that sheep, didn't he?
Clause, because it's for like. Well, let me look up the description of the Heisman, but it's for the college player whose performance best exhibits the pursuit of excellence with integrity.
Well, you end up with the Batman problem. If the replica trophy method is more authentic, because if for some reason Vince Young and Reggie Bush were roommates and their trophy cases were next to each other, you could potentially have the real award and the fake award in the same room together.
Oh, that would be cool, though.
Maybe not the word I would use. It would be difficult to explain.
No, because this is the greatest sitcom of the past 10 years.
Reggie Bush and Vince Young
are roommates, and Reggie Bush was so annoyed that he got the Heisman taken away from him that he built a replica Heisman. And he is a passive-aggressive dick and puts it right next to Vince Young, and in this mythical universe, they gave it to Vince Young.
Now, if the trophies were anthropomorphized, then Seth MacFarlane could sell it to Fox and make another $1 billion.
Oh.
I know, right?
How did you do that?
I just wanted to say anthropomorphized.
But you did the thing where you combined it with a situation I don't want to see. I just want to see actual Reggie Bush and actual Vince Young, past their prime in the 30s. Well, I guess Vince Young's already past his prime. But but Vince Young has the award and Reggie Bush moves in. Like, they're like really good friends, and they move in and they like reminisce about the USC Texas game or whatever. And
they're like bros as long as they both don't like look at the award.
Yeah, but then Reggie Bush, he doesn't come in with the award. In like the second episode, he purchases the trophy and puts it next to Vince Young's Heisman, but he doesn't say a word about it. He just does it one day, and Vince Young is so baffled he doesn't know what to do about this, but he doesn't want to rock the boat.
So he lets it go for a couple of months, and then they're both just they're watching some shitty pro game on TV, and they're both hammered, and Vince Young is like, "So what's up with the trophy? What's with that, man? That's kind of weird, right?"
But so this would be great is if I don't know if there's an inscription on the trophy for what it's awarded for, but the inscription says something like the outstanding college football player whose performance best exhibits the pursuit of excellence and integrity. Winners epitomize great ability combined with diligence, perseverance, and hard work. If there's a copy of that on Reggie Bush's award, but he just eliminated the word integrity.
Cross it out with a Sharpie.
Well, no, because he got the award made, so it just doesn't have the words.
It's like one of those spot the differences photo hunt things.
And so they'll have a girl over, probably just the random girl character you see in sitcoms that has a platonic relationship. There's a little bit of sexual tension, but she's always dating someone else.
And Vince Young will be sitting on the couch all sullen, just throwing in really catty comments every now and then.
And she'll look at the award. She's like, "Oh, you two won the same award." Huh.
Be like, "Oh, his trophy isn't the only thing that doesn't have integrity."
Why is there a difference in these templates?
She's like,
They
oh,
changed
oh my God, you're right. I didn't even notice that. And Vince Young storms out. No one does.
Oh man, this is.
And then he throws his back out going up the steps.
Like a season and a half, and then they'd need to cancel it. But I'd watch the hell out of that season and a half.
It should be like Sherlock.
Oh,
It should be like
yes!
like 3 episode seasons, but like 90-minute episodes.
That would be so great.
Just like one really long, like, and they could all be like different period pieces. We could get dressed up in different like elaborate costumes or whatever.
By the way, 2005, there were a number of other interesting awards that were awarded at. Guess who won Coach of the Year in 2005?
Lane Kiffin.
Joe Paterno.
Oh.
You want to take that back, huh?
No, actually, no. Don't don't say things like that around Penn State. They'll still run you out of town.
I'm looking at all of these award winners, and not a single one of them was considered a success, or every one of them was either considered a bust in the NFL or is Joe Paterno.